Welcome to the Working CEO podcast, where we share real advice for busy business leaders. No business school BS, no sugarcoating, just straight talk about how to get work done. When it comes to being a working CEO, today's guest, Chris Weiser, has been there, done that, building and selling a seven-figure managed IT services provider. Now he's helping other IT entrepreneurs do the same with his sales coaching firm, aptly named the seven-figure MSP. Stay tuned to this episode of The Working CEO to hear the fast growth secrets Chris shares with clients and his own strategies for success as a serial entrepreneur. Welcome, everyone. I'm your co-host, Susanna Song. And I'm here with the Working CEO, Mark Porter, CEO of Highwire Networks. Hi, Mark. We are on a roll with this podcast.
Hi, Susanna. Thank you. And hello, Chris.
Good day, guys. How you doing?
We're doing great, and we're so glad that you've joined us on this podcast. We actually have a lot of MSP partners who receive coaching from you, Chris. Take us back to owning an MSP and when you came to that realization that you wanted to sell it and maybe take another, path to starting your own company in coaching.
Sure. Yeah. So like many of you guys that are listening to this, I was an MSP owner. I'm in Susanna, Mark. We weren't that far apart. I was up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. You guys are Chicago. So we were, kind of similar Midwestern people, which is a lot of fun. But, it's kind of interesting because I had never, we all think about potential exit plan and all this other stuff that we might do, but it's not like I was actively trying to sell my business. And I had a company walk in the door, and I think they found us on our Google ads. Actually, they walked in the door and said, hey, and actually they were from Chicago, wanted to expand to Milwaukee, approached me with an opportunity to acquire us. And I was I don't want to say lucky is probably the wrong word, but I was in this place where I had been doing a lot of business things right, which had allowed me to, so for example, I had a lot of recurring revenue. I had a lot of long-term signed agreements. When I say long-term, the shortest we had left was 26 months. That kind of stuff also not only leads you to be a strong, profitable, good company, but it makes you pretty acquirable and attractive from an acquisition standpoint. So it just kind of happened. And, I went through something when I was in my early to mid 20s, actually was part owner of a dial-up internet provider. We're dating ourselves here at that point. But I was part of a dial-up internet provider, and we had gotten approached by another company to get sold. And I watched the two partners, which were a husband and wife, kind of hem and haw about trying to, let's drive the price up. And they want us, they're coming in, let's go out of our way to try and get as much money as we can. And 3 months went by, and they ended up not getting the deal. And another 3 months went by, and dial-up pretty much died off because DSL hit the market, and they watched their nest egg evaporate into nothing. And I believe those people are still working for someone now. So they never took that opportunity. So that taught me a pretty valuable lesson, that when somebody walks in the door with a check and a good amount of cash, it's not a bad thing to do. And sitting here right now, 6 years later, I absolutely made the right decision. I was happy about it. And the one reason, Suzanne, you asked me about, why did I kind of go into coaching or starting this? I look at the things that I did to grow my business, which were, that long recurring revenue, longer contracts, term agreements, whatever you want to call them, along with making sure you have a scalable business and a scalable stack. But I was very, very sales focused. And I looked at the rest of the MSP market, which isn't very sales focused. There's very few. Mark, you could probably agree. Maybe you disagree with this, but
I do not disagree.
There's very few MSPs that are sales focused that are out there. So I just saw an opportunity to bring something that I did well. And now, again, fast forward 3-4 years later into where we're at with seven-figure MSP, we hit, and a lot of times people call it luck, but it's more timing. It's preparation and opportunity and timing. The cybersecurity market has really hit. All of our sales focused messaging is really hitting well. And we've seen about I think we're about 475 in terms of percentage of growth over the last year over year. So 3 years in a row, we grew 400% or 500% at a crack. I built this entire thing for scale when I did it, so I can deliver our message to the most people as often and with as little work as I could. So I built it that way, and it's allowed us to really scale quickly and well. And all of our messaging, which is sales focused, get your revenue up, get your profitability up, but focused on cybersecurity first, which is why we're talking here, because we partner together, has really resonated. And we're seeing massive success across our clients. We're seeing massive wins. Literally was just scrolling through our Inner Circle clients group here earlier today, and we're seeing people that are coming in the first week and seeing 3 to 5x ROI on their program costs in the first week of being in the program. So it's just
awesome.
It's been awesome to see and awesome to watch. And it's I honestly, this market's changing so fast. I can't even, it's going to be a very exciting next couple of years. Right?
Well, you hit on a couple of things in there. There's a lot to unpack, but there's a couple of things I want to hone in on, because I think, the one thing I'm passionate about entrepreneurs. I'm passionate and working with young kids who want to start businesses, and I spend a decent amount of my time helping get calls from partners or vendors or other that are trying to figure things out, or work on some advisory boards with some of our larger partners, and I think it's absolutely critical. I've been I use that term lucky too, but I fortunate, however you want to say it. There's not a good word, because it definitely takes a little bit of luck and a little bit of some good breaks along the way. But it's a lot.
I think that's more timing. That's the way I look at it.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, hitting the market right with the right message and the right product.
The harder I work, the luckier I get. It's a weird thing, right? But God knows, I mean, I was a cop 25 years ago, and I could barely work a computer. I had to have my now wife, then girlfriend, help me type a resume. So I think
that was last week, wasn't it?
Yeah, probably. She probably still does it. But to one of your points about technology, actually, people always thought in our early days that I was a technologist, that I was a techie guy. I just liked sales. I learned technology to make sure that when we were installing stuff or that it got done right. And I learned by watching people and asking. I would hang out with our field techs and stuff like that. So Chris, you hit on a couple of things there. And one of the things that I think is critically important, you talked about you had learned a lesson by watching that other couple and their failure to sell. But I think there's some parallels to even right now, some parallels to the DSL taking over the dial-up market. And I've been through the process a few times on both sides of it. And I think people have a tendency to look at the business either way too personally and not view it as an asset. And you've talked about, as you built your business today, from the ground up, you built it for scale, and that's critically important. When you look at how to view the business and how to go through that process, how do you look at that today? And what advice would you give an entrepreneur when somebody comes walking in that door? What are the 2 or 3 things that they need to be thinking about, like, now?
Yeah, it's a great question, because, and I think, to me, and we can see where your head's at on this, but everything in business starts with cash flow. Everything starts with revenue. And, it's one thing if you're trying to hide, I guess, I talk to entrepreneurs a lot of times where they're like, oh, I want to show as little money as I can, but okay, good luck doing a whole lot in business if you're going to do that. I mean, I talk to a lot of businesses that are saying that all the time, and I'm building a house right now. I'm literally building a multi-million-dollar house. You want to talk about getting exposed to the biggest intent, ever, because they come after you and they rip everything in your life apart, which means you have to, as an entrepreneur, you have to show that, which means you have to build strong cash flow, strong profitability. All those things matter. And, I would not be sitting here today if I would have not. And I think it was a little more accident, just kind of reading and consuming and basically immersing myself in what does it take. And part of it is I didn't want to, I don't want to say I was lazy, but I didn't want to be the guy that was under desks all the time as an IT company. Whereas that to me is the biggest factor that these MSP owners, or even just business owners as a whole, you have this control freak problem that I have to control everything in my business. That's not scalable.
That keeps coming up in all of our podcasts, doesn't it, Susanna?
That is not scalable. And I see, that's one of the biggest battles that we fight in my coaching program is get yourself out of the day-to-day tech crap. And I don't care if it's whatever. And if you're going to be in the day-to-day tech crap, then you better hire somebody to run your company. Because people come to me and they're like, oh, well, what about a doctor? Successful doctors have a CEO of their practice.
They have a business manager. Every one of them I have ever met has a business manager.
If they want to be in the trenches, that's fine. Build somebody. But the problem with that is early stage technology companies rarely come in with any kind of cash set aside. They're like, oh, I'm going to go start a business, which means that you have to do this all really bootstrapped from the ground. And it's very hard to focus on revenue and cash flow when your mindset is, I got to, run help desk today.
Right.
So I think a lot of it comes, and you can see I learned the second time, it was all about scale. It was, and Absolutely. I did that when I started, but I was still a tech guy when I started. I was lucky because I was a lazy tech guy. And so when you're a lazy tech guy,
that was the key to success.
Well, and if you ever, Bill Gates has said this, he said, if you give me somebody with a bunch of degrees and a lazy guy, I'm going to hire the lazy guy because he's going to figure out, and you want him to be smart, obviously, but he's going to figure out how to do it more efficiently. And that's, I kind of put myself in that box a little bit.
Work smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
Well, people think I'm an efficiency zealot, and the real issue is I only want to do it once. Like I do not want to do this over and over. I do not want to sit here for 30 minutes if I can do it in 15, even down to some of the internal rules I've set for meetings within my leadership team. It's 30 minutes is more than enough. 45 minutes is as long as I'm going to accept. And put your cell phones down. Get your butt in the seat. Let's hammer it out and let's get on. And because I want to have a life. I've made the mistake, like probably you did, and everybody does in that control freak stage where I thought I had to work 20 hours a day. I thought I had to be the guy in charge of everything. And, people ask when the business started to scale is when I realized I wasn't that damn important to it.
Well, and so much of this is, I fully believe it starts with a cash flow mindset. Sales first, worrying about getting revenue in the door so you have enough cash flow to hire the right people. Now, you also have to be 100% okay with letting that go. That has to happen.
Yeah.
Or, you can make some money, but you become a trading hours for dollars person. And if that's your business, that's fine. But there's a fine line, and you are at that point kind of a slave to your job. And you've kind of made yourself a crappy job because you don't really have a boss. You don't really have time off. You don't get paid very well because
nobody to back you up.
Exactly. So I think, so much of it comes from, and people that watch my clients group from afar, I get a lot of criticism and haters and all this stuff online. I have the biggest Facebook group in the IT services channel. So I get a lot of hate and a lot of Facebook ad hate and LinkedIn ad hate and all this other stuff. And it's all around people saying, oh, you can't solve everything with cash flow. This discussion is why that matters, because you can solve pretty much every business problem with the proper mindset and cash flow. You just got to let that happen. And I think that's, it's a long way to come around back to your original question. I think that's my answer to that.
Well, the most profitable business in the world, most people don't understand it, but the most profitable business in the world does not matter if it does not cash flow, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that's a huge issue. And when you, it's funny, bad advice is what we're trying to fight here. And what, one of the things that you hit on, I see this all the time, is we're now in a more acquisitive mode and looking out and looking for opportunities that fit the right mold. I see deals all the time. And one of the things I see in the small space is guys have gotten bad advice and set up their companies as C Corps or other types of entities where it behooves them to drain all the cash out of it through distributions because they don't want to pay taxes through the company and then pay them again personally. How critical do you think it is, and for the average MSP, how critical, what percentage of these folks that you work with are getting the right advice on accounting, business consulting, one of our other guests talked about building a board, having a really good board of people who can actively help you in your business, who are attached but not in it day to day. What percentage of them are doing it, and how critical do you see those things to the success?
Yeah, it's really another good question. Where'd you get these questions? Somebody wrote these for you, I think.
I
Must have been Susanna. Probably Susanna.
Great minds think alike, and ours too. So,
so I think honestly, it's mission critical as far as I'm concerned, and it's very the people. And this is part of what we do in my program too, which is cool that we didn't talk about any of this stuff ahead of time, so it's really cool to see how aligned we are. I had at my MSP a board services firm that worked with me. I also have a board services firm that works with me now. So it's not a true board of directors, but it's a group that comes in and says, okay, we're going to act as a board. You hire us and pay us a flat rate. I also have a tax planner. I also have an accounting firm, and I also have a bookkeeper. That's extremely focused on all of the things we're talking about. The amount of MSPs that I actually see with that advice is probably under 3%. It's really, really low. And they have no formal business training, which is, I don't have any really formal.
I didn't either.
Training, right. So you don't have to have that.
All the more important to have those people around you.
Exactly
though,
my
right?
point. Exactly my point. So you don't have any formal business training, and then you're going to try and do this. Usually they're doing this because they started their business bootstrapped and they're not charging properly. And they don't look at margins. They don't look at cash flow. They just look at, okay, I had some guru online or some guy that wrote an MSP cloud book or whatever tell me how I should be doing these plans and this is how much I should charge. Well, that's the stuff that happened 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And the market has massively evolved, and you should be coming in, looking at your plans. This is crazy that you asked me this question, because I had a prospect, one of our existing clients that signed with us in the last week here said, hey, I have a friend of mine that's thinking of starting an MSP. He was told by a business coach that he should get his feet wet for 6 to 9 to 12 months in the market first and then get coaching and training. And I was like, there's no way you should even think about that's like, if you want to be a doctor, that doesn't mean you go work in the ER as a hack amateur for 6 months and then
just
you
go commit malpractice on a bunch of IT customers. And
exactly. And that's
get them breached and see what happens.
Yeah, and that's the danger of where we're at right now. So, bottom line is you should be starting your business the right way from the beginning, especially if you're looking to start now, if you're listening to this, if you're looking to start now, or even if you've been in business for 3, 5, 10 years, whatever, you better learn how to manage money. You better focus on profitability, cash flow, not just, I want to get some clients and service their stuff, because where we sit right now, and Mark, you know this, where we're going with this industry now is compliance, legality. We're probably going to be seeing, you mentioned malpractice a minute ago. We're not far from seeing malpractice. I don't know what you want to call it.
The E&O policies are ridiculous. Yeah,
absolutely. And you and I have had previous discussions about E&O, D&O, cybercrime. The insurance companies are done being the bank, and they're going to be the ones that fast track legislation in this industry. And you're going to start seeing things like, if you pay a ransom, you're going to be charged with a crime. And you're going to be seeing things like, if you don't self-report, or if you enable your clients to not self-report as an MSP, you're going to be charged with a crime. Those are all things that are coming. You can't put in the right services in today's managed services or IT or MSSP market if you do not properly charge. You have to have cash flow to do that. Mm-hmm. So back to your initial question, that stuff is that mission critical. It's more important now than ever. The break fix MSP, yes, you can get clients as a break fix MSP, but you better be doing the right things with them, and you better be advising them properly, or you're going to be held responsible.
So when you look at, Joe or Jane Schmo, and just in any sort of business, not outside of tech and the stuff that we do together, what do you think, when they're just starting out, I kind of get a kick out of it is because everybody talks about a business plan, right? And having this elaborate plan for 5 years and those things.
I still don't have that.
I don't. We have a vision because that's how.
That's all you have to have. I agree with that. If you want to try and go get money, that's one thing. But
we work our vision backwards. We have we call it the traction organizer, and we use it. We have a system that we use that will work you through. If you have a 5-year vision, you then work it to 3 years. You work it to 1 year, and you work it down to the next quarter, right? And all those things. But we're at a state of maturity Although every time it gets stable, we start something else to make sure we keep everybody on their toes. But what do you say to the one that's just starting out? Like, what's one thing what's one thing that they've got to do or think about it, and that you would do yourself? Like, going back to Chris just left the dial-up ISP and he's starting his own deal. What's one thing that you got to do right in that very beginning stage?
Yeah. So I'm going to kind of combo it like a 1 and a 1.5, but pick a niche, solve their problem. What problem do they have? And if you think about what I did, just looking at what 7-figure MSP is, I looked at a vertical that I was very comfortable with. It's very niche focused though, high niche. And I looked at the issues the industry has, and I solved a specific problem in that industry. So pick a niche, solve a problem. And that doesn't mean that's all you have to work with. But if you look at what's changed in our world in the last 2 years, we have, we're still in the middle of this COVID mess. It's put us in a place where people are working differently than they ever have. I believe all three of us are at different, I'm at my house. Looks like Susanna's at her house. Mark's at an office. We can work from anywhere now. Yep. So can all of your clients. So it's expanded your client base, especially if we're going to talk to the MSP community. You can do different things but bottom line, pick a niche, solve their problem.
That's awful familiar, Susanna, when we talk about the EOS system that we use as a general framework for the business, Chris. It when you go through the first, there's 2 sessions about 30 days apart that you go through with a facilitator, and they're 8 hours, and it's a grind, and it's actually pretty interesting. And one of the early things they talk about is, what's your niche, right? And so you
riches and niches is what
you write it down. Yep. And the next thing is they talk about the purpose. And in our case, we were already, I don't know, we were double-digit millions when I decided that I needed a hand in figuring out what the next step of the journey looks like, right? You had been at it for a long time and kind of had ideas about what I wanted to do, but the how I wanted to do it part, I needed help. And I always tell people, like, that's the one thing I didn't do enough of early on that I wish I did, and all that. But the second thing they talk about is that purpose, and it's what gets you out of bed every day. Why are we doing it, right? So the niche is what we do, and then the purpose is why we do it, right? And I think that's very similar to what you're talking about there, because solving those problems and having something that you're really great in that niche and you can solve those problems. I think people, especially in the tech business, I think people like to solve problems.
Absolutely.
I think they like to have that, it makes them feel good, right?
Well, not only that, but you think about what it does to your potential competitors. So people are so obsessed with, my competitor, or I got to go to a place where I'm dealing with competitors and all these other things. But if you are actually
keep your head down and do the work, man,
passionate and problem focused or solution focused, it doesn't matter. Like, you could have the best competitors in the world, and it doesn't really matter, because you're solving a problem that someone has. And you just got to make sure that the problem is big enough. And, going back to what I said about our initial problem solution scenario, is I looked at sales and that MSPs were not charging proper margins, and we're solving that problem. We're actively going after MSPs and saying, follow our steps, you're going to hit an 80% margin. And that's what we want them to do. And when you do that and you actually have success with that, it becomes pretty hard to.
It's life-changing for them too, if they start, understanding it. That's so. You mentioned something else, and I want to. We've talked about this offline. We've talked about it. We've chatted about it on Facebook and stuff before, and I'm fascinated by this. And the first thing I do every day when I get up, and I get up early, I read. I do my fair share, probably too much doom scrolling these days on Twitter and Facebook and all the crazy stuff that's going on, and try to keep up with the nuttiness. I'm trying to cut back on that, but I read the journal. I read other things going on. I read tech stuff. I just want to learn something in the morning. I want to figure out something new. I want to get some other ideas. Sometimes I listen to music and kind of zone out, whatever, but I try to expand my horizons a little bit every morning, and not always perfect at it. Sometimes I get something out of it. Sometimes I don't, but I'm fascinated by some of the folks out there who are very quick to shoot down that your system could work or any system could work. Because honestly, that implies that as an entrepreneur that you have all the answers. And I've learned maybe the hard way sometimes. I wish I was smarter about it earlier, that when you embrace a framework, and I don't even know that it's necessarily magic about one framework to work with, but it's a framework, right? Like to me, seems like you have to do it. It could be you, it could be somebody else. I don't know. I mean, your system's great, but how do you run a business without some sort of framework to build upon and sort of repeat the success and not be a one-hit wonder?
Well, so much of this is they've been doing it this way for so long, and that's part of this industry's problem. A lot of industries are very similar, but people get comfortable. And you think about how dangerous comfort is in life, and a lot of that is there's a lot of variables that go into having that comfort level, but most of it is upbringing and what you surround yourself with. And it's pretty easy as a human being to get pretty comfortable, I think. And I just, a lot of it. And then there's also, personality. I personality profile everybody that comes into my company, and I really do my best to surround myself with really solid staff. And, that's still hard. But the bottom line is I'm always pushing myself to not be comfortable. And I look at the people that are the most critical. They're the ones that haven't scaled. They haven't changed. They haven't evolved. They haven't done anything to push themselves out of that comfort zone in weeks, months, years. And I think that's probably the biggest player in that scenario and COVID has just accelerated some of that stuff too, because people have not I know people that haven't left their houses in a year and a half.
They're spending way too much time in front of that screen, right?
They sit there and they have this thing, which is, I'm holding up my phone for y'all that are looking up, watching or listening to this. They have their phone and they kind of, like you said, doom scroll, or they look at all this other stuff, and then throw into that some scenarios, some personal troubles or potentially some financial issues. And it just becomes inescapable at times. And I think a lot of it, and I agree with you. I mean, there's multiple different scenarios, multiple different coaches, multiple different things you can look at. Structure, giving yourself some type of a formula to follow. Many of them work, and it's really the ones that aren't succeeding. I use this example when people come into my program. I've been lifting with a trainer for just over a year and a half. She could be the best personal trainer in the world. And if I don't show up for class, if I don't do my exercises, if I don't eat right, and I don't focus on my cardio, I will not get into better shape. And it's not her fault in any capacity. So much of this is, looking at those multitude of factors. But to kind of summarize that, if you're not growing, you're going backwards. Like that's a real thing. And that's especially true in business. If you are not actively growing your business and doing things to push yourself to a place of discomfort, you're not living, you're dying.
So if you think about that, I think that really goes back to some of the earlier things we talked about. If you're starting a business today and you're not surrounding yourself with talented people and you're not finding people who can help you and give you advice, it is virtually impossible to grow. You'll get your initial growth spurt, whatever, you get a few customers and all that, but it is virtually impossible to grow because in order to grow, you have to continually reinvest and reinvent, right? And if you don't have the cash flow, you can't reinvest. If you don't have the time and the investment in yourself, you can't reinvent the company. You can't be that visionary that the company needs, that mouthpiece to the world that the company has to have, because you're so limited in your ability to get out there and do that because you're stuck in the day-to-day, the mundane.
I agree. I'm going to give you a quick example on this. And this is so true. We had a show. In fact, it's a show that you and I met in person for the first time at here in Austin. Had a guy pay $2,500 to spend with me for a Friday. Spend 4 hours with me. We'll work on your plan yourself. I'm sitting there with him on this Friday morning. He is a one-man show. And I am I'm about 14, 15 people, 8-figure company. I put my phone away, put all my stuff away. And I'm like, let's work on all your stuff. And he's got me real time. He paid money to have me real time. He's sitting there. Guy must have got 50 phone calls from clients calling him direct, and he answered every one. And it kind of like, if you think about all of this, that literally summarizes everything we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Because he's allowing his clients to dictate everything. He's not charging them enough, so he respects his time, and he's not charging them enough, so he can outsource that. But the biggest thing is he's like, I can't hire people. They can't do the work that I can.
They probably can do better work than he can. He just doesn't know it yet.
You're never going to scale, man. Like it literally comes into that. And so, kind of going back to your question, anyone that's going to start a company, these are the things you have to think about. If you're a year in, 2 years in, 3 years in, you have to, and best time to do it is on day one. Second best time to do it right now.
Yeah.
Get working on this.
Don't delay.
Don't delay is right.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Chris. You've definitely found your niche. And as Mark said, you need to have passion to back that up. So we clearly see that. And we're just so glad that you joined us today on our podcast. And also thank you to our listeners for joining us. If you have feedback or questions about today's podcast, please contact us at podcast@highwirenetworks.com. And be sure to join us for our next episode of The Working CEO, going to the dark side from editor-in-chief to marketer-in-chief with Callie Henderson, senior partner at BuzzTheory. Until next time, I'm Susanna Song.
I'm Mark Porter.
And this is The Working CEO.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe so you don't miss the next episode of The Working CEO. Remember, whether your collar is blue or white, roll up your sleeves and let's get real. The Working CEO is made possible by Highwire Networks, a leading global provider of technical, professional, electrical, and managed cybersecurity services, serving businesses in more than 180 countries. To learn more, visit highwirenetworks.com.